Hello everybody, welcome to another video. In this one we are going to be taking a look at the staffs in Dark Souls 2. I wasn't originally planning to do staffs because when it comes to magic there is a lot to get into, such as rings and armors and different weapons that can be useful for your build. But a lot of people have requested that I do some more magic related stuff, so I'm going to try to do my best. I'm going to start off by talking about the Sorcerer first and then move on to the Hexer. However, before I do that, let me say a bit about the rings, weapons, and armors that could potentially be useful for your build. In the beginning, it may not be a bad idea to stick with the dagger to do backstabs, as well as the longsword for general combat, because these weapons are quite light and can be wielded easily with one hand and low stats. Something I always like to mention, if you're using a weapon as well as a staff, you want to put the weapon in your right hand. This way you can do backstabs as well as your weapon does more damage. When it comes to rings, one of the best one is the Southern Ritual Band. This ring will give you additional attunement slots. Another good one is the Clear Bluestone Ring. This increases your cast speed, and the Sorcerer Clutch Ring, which gives you 35 points more magic damage to your spells. This is kind of what a Ring of Blades would be for physical weapons. When it comes to armor set, the best set is the Lion Mage armor. This gives you better cast speed, and you can find this in the Shaded Ruins. That branching path, by the way, is probably one you should consider going really early because you get a lot of magic related stuff when you go to the Shaded Woods and Brightstone Cove. Finally, for the headpiece, the Hexer hood is the best. This gives you additional spell uses, which is in my opinion a lot stronger than anything else that you could use. It also increases your intelligence and your faith by 1. There are some other helmets that do that, but this one gives you a lot of things in just one headpiece. One final thing you might want to consider is the Crown of the Old Iron King. If you're not resting in a bonfire for a long time, or you're doing the DLC with a friend or something and you can't rest, this could be a useful headpiece because it gives you attunement slots back every 2 minutes or so. Okay, let's get into it and start talking about some staffs. The first one is the Sorcerer Staff. You can get this in the Forest of Fallen Giants, close to Pate's Trap, and it's a pretty basic staff. It's not going to be doing insane damage, but it will get the job done until you get something better. This is probably a good staff to start off with, whether you're a Sorcerer or a Hexer, but it does get a little bit better scaling with sorceries. I don't recommend upgrading this too high though, because you may want to save your chunks. And there are 2 other staffs that you're going to want to use later on anyways. One of which is the Wichtree Branch. This is pretty much just an upgrade to the Sorcerer Staff. Can be a little bit annoying to get though. You have to go to the Black Gulch and kill 2 giants. They will then drop the Forgotten Key, and you need to take this key back down to the well in Majula to open one of the Forgotten Doors. In here you'll find the key to the DLC, as well as the Wichtree Branch. Now this thing scales a little bit better with Dark, but it's still a very good staff for magic, and it gets one of the higher cast speeds as well. I'm going to be comparing a lot of these sorcery staffs to this one. You'll see why though. But up next is the Staff of Amana. You get this from the Amana mages. And this thing has a little bit slower cast speed than the previous one. But it does do more damage if you go for intelligence builds. However, at this point in the game, you should be having the Staff of Wisdom anyways. The same thing can be said about the Lizard Staff. This one also gets an S scaling in intelligence. It's dropped by the Hollow Mages in Huntsman's Copse. You can also farm it inside the boss room of the Executioner's Chariot. One little trick you can do there is to kill both of the Hollow Mages, and if they don't happen to drop this staff, you can just quit your game and you'll spawn outside of the boss room. This will reset the fight and the boss, and you can try and get it again. However, it might be a little bit more trouble than it's worth, because this thing has a little bit less cast speed than the Wichtree Branch, and it only does a little bit more damage. So a bit of a weird staff, the Retainer Staff. You can get this in the 3rd DLC after turning off the ice. This thing takes 18 intelligence to use, and it has a little bit higher base damage than any of the other staffs because it doesn't get any scaling. However, you still need 18 intelligence to use staff, so by this point in the game you should probably be proficient with one of the other staffs that actually take advantage of your scaling. So it's a bit of a strange one. Maybe if it started off with 12 int or something, there would be situations where it would be useful to use that high base damage, but oh well. Another staff that you can get in the Ice DLC is Azals Staff. This thing gets an S scaling with both intelligence and faith, and the design of the staff is to pretty much be in a one-shot build. It's probably a little bit better with sorcery, however, because you can use it with things such as Unleash Magic and Soul Geyser to do crazy damage to bosses. The drawback of it, however, is that it has very low cast speed at only 30. At late game or higher NG pluses, you could keep this thing around if you want to do some high damage to bosses and then keep your primary staff for normal combat. But anyways, the best staff for sorceries is the Staff of Wisdom. You get this in the Royal Army campsite on your way to Brightstone Cove Saldora. It takes 50 intelligence to use and it gets an S scaling in intelligence. Also it upgrades with Twinkling Titanite. Ultimately this is the one you want to shoot for if you are an intelligence build because it's just simply the best. It also gets 110 counter damage, which is only one of 2 staffs that do that. On your way to getting this one, I probably recommend starting off with maybe the Sorcerer Staff and upgrading to the Wichtree Branch. Unless you decide to go the branching path that takes you to Brightstone Cove Saldora immediately, which is a decent thing that you should do. There are a lot of items that you can get going that way that will benefit a sorcerer, including you could get the Northern Ritual Band +2. If you have a Bonfire Ascetic, you can fight the Scorpionus Nashka. Not to mention that in the Shaded Ruins as well as in Brightstone Cove Saldora, there are a lot of Twinkling Titanites that may help you upgrade the Staff of Wisdom. So let's talk a little bit about Hexer stuff. So 2 good staffs for hexes can also be the Sorcerer Staff and the Wichtree Branch, because these things you can get really early and they have low stats to wield. But the first proper Hexer staff is the Archdrake Staff. You can get this from Falcon. You need 10 intelligence and 10 faith to talk to him. That shouldn't be difficult to get since you are a Hexer. This staff, however, does a little bit less damage than the Wichtree Branch when they're both infused with the Darkstone. It also weighs more and it has slower cast speed. Next up is the Bone Staff. You get this in a chest in the Lost Bastille. It takes 25 intelligence to use and it has no faith requirement. It's pretty much the same story at 25 int and 25 faith. The Wichtree Branch does more damage. Maybe these staffs, since they have a little bit better scaling, would be better for you at later int and faith, but at that point you would just switch them out for the Sunset Staff anyways. Another one that you could say the same thing about is the Transgressor Staff. The requirements to use this one are 15 int and 12 faith, and it gets an S scaling in Dark. It doesn't really compete with the Wichtree Branch. The stats are pretty close to what you want to have when you get the Sunset Staff, so I would probably give this one a pass as well. So the Olenford Staff. This one can be obtained in the Undead Crypt in a hidden wall that you have to use a Pharaoh's Lockstone to open. It takes 40 intelligence and no faith, but it scales mainly with Dark. When I had 40 int and 20 faith, it did only a little bit more damage than the Wichtree Branch, but the cast speed is slower. And at this level, you can also use the Sunset Staff, which is better than this one again. I'm sure you're starting to see a pattern here. But finally, one staff for Hexers that I would recommend outside the Wichtree Branch and the Sunset Staff is the Black Witch's Staff. You can get this in the Undead Crypt as well by the witches that use it. Or if you want a 100% chance to obtain it, there's a Mimic in Aldia's Mansion, one of the ones in the ceiling. That Mimic has a 100% chance of dropping the Black Witch's Staff. It upgrades with normal Titanite, so you don't have to share the Twinklings with the Sunset Staff when you ultimately get that one. And since you're likely to have 20 int and 20 faith as a Hexer, that is perfect for this because that is what it takes to use it. 20 int and 20 faith is a very, very good sweet spot to hit because you can use a lot of spells from other classes that may help your build. That's why Hexer can be extremely powerful when you combine spells. I don't recommend using the Black Witch's Staff for damage though. You should use your primary staff for that, but this thing can be helpful for complementary spells. This is one of my favorite weapons and it's my favorite staff in the game because it fits really well to what I like to do. I use my weapons for damage and I use the staff for spells that are going to help me do more damage or give me better survivability. But yeah, let's talk about the best staff for a Hexer, which is the Sunset Staff. Obviously, you get this from Falcon after you get 20 int and 20 faith and then you talk to him. Something you should probably get very, very early. And try not to infuse anything with a Dark Knight Stone so that you make sure that you have one by the time you get this thing if you're planning to infuse it with Dark. So when it comes to staffs, there doesn't seem to be a lot of competition. The way I see it, there are about 4 staffs that you can use for either intelligence or faith. Some of them are the same though. But for sorceries, early game, you should probably stick with the Sorcerer Staff as well as the Wichtree Branch. Then you should get the Staff of Wisdom, and at later levels, or maybe even new game pluses, you could consider upgrading Azals Staff to do some insane damage to certain bosses. And when it comes to Hexers, same thing for the beginning, the Sorcery Staff and the Wichtree Branch are really good. The Black Witch's Staff can be one you use for spells such as repair or cast light, depending on what you want to use, maybe heal. And then the Sunset Staff ultimately should be your primary staff as a Hexer. Staffs are not quite like weapons, where one weapon will be better than another depending on their moveset, even though the weapon that has a weaker moveset may do more damage. When it comes to staffs, you pretty much just want to upgrade your stats and then use the best casting tool for you at that point. And yeah, the Staff of Wisdom and the Sunset Staff are the best 2 staffs for Hexer and Sorcerers. But yeah, that was it though. Thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.